welcome to Playwright, a podcast about creating and sharing new ways to play. My name is Ryan Hamann. You can call me H.
And I'm Ryan Quintal. You can call me Q. H, have you been using the state of the world, the quarantine, to catch up on a backlog? Are you finding yourself able to dip into rounds of Picross or missions in different games in between meetings at work? How are you managing your video game time?
You know, I did just beat that Konami Picross game on the phone that everyone's been playing.
Oh, there's a Picross game on the phone.
Yeah, it's called Pixel Puzzle Challenge or something like that. It's really good.
Oh, it's not allowed to be called Picross. Is that owned by Nintendo?
Probably. Yeah, but it's a very good game. It took me probably maybe a year and a half to get through. There's a lot of puzzles, but it's all free. It's all unobtrusive. It's just a really pleasant Picross experience.
I have to get it because I've been playing through. So Season 4 or S4 or whatever they want to call it came out. And I found myself, kind of having regrets that I did not take S3 to its fullest potential.
The Jupiter produced ones on the Switch.
Yes. So I haven't played through all of S3. So I started doing that again. It's a wonderful little, it has, a New York Times crossword puzzle type of meditative state. And it's really cool. I've never spent a lot of time to fall in love with a Picross before, but I really do love S3. And so hopefully if I can get through it. I don't know how many puzzles there are, but then I'll move on to S4. Do you do the mega ones or do you just do the regular ones?
I've done the mega ones in the past. I don't know. I think I played all the way through S1 and did like all of the different puzzles in there. So, cool. I've really got to check back on the 3DS was really where my Picross phase kicked in the strongest. Nothing replaces that stylus,
Yeah, no kidding. And there's something about, I'm surprised that we haven't seen on the more powerful hardware, the Switch, them leaning more into the 3D Picross, because that seemed like such a cool idea.
Yeah, I'd be well up for another one of those. Anyways, let's go ahead and pitch some video games. What I'm pitching is just kind of a loose mechanic more than a game in and of itself, but we'll see what we can do with it. I know there's one that we've referenced before, but now I want to build around it entirely instead of just kind of adding it in to a pre-established concept. I want to build the concepts around the singular mechanic. And basically, I want to see what other types of games we can add Star Wars Episode 1 Racer controls to. So that is, push both sticks forward to go forward. You kind of pull one backwards and the other one forward to turn, kind of like you're rowing a boat.
Yep.
And applying the different pressure to the different paddles. But the best way to kind of understand it is to just think of the two engines of the pod racer from Star Wars Episode 1. Or alternatively, maybe the Katamari controls. But I'm very enthused by those controls. I know that game has recently come to the Nintendo Switch as well. So I just want to see what else we can put it in. I'll go ahead and start the clock there.
I like the idea of coming at this with like ship combat, or you're driving a machine of sorts. So you mentioned rowing, and I like the idea of that pulling back and forth to create that sort of rowing sensation. So maybe that there's been so many, I feel like, forgotten, pitched and then forgotten over multiple E3 pirate games from Ubisoft. I can't help but wonder if it was something like this would feel at home. Yeah, of course, I've got Assassin's Creed Odyssey on the brain, but I'm thinking about like naval combat now.
There was a game called, I'm not going to remember the name. It's going to bug me, but I saw something at PAX last year where there was it was a 2-player police car driving game, and the police car was kind of divided down the middle color-wise with the red and blue on either side. And then each player could control like half of the car, and you had to work together to navigate around the city.
Oh, that's
cool. It's a bit different from what we're looking at, but I really like the kind of cooperative or applying a more difficult control scheme to something that should be pretty easy to turn it into a different type of challenge.
Yeah, I can't help but think of potentially a sequel to Untitled Goose Game, Untitled Something Else Game, where the main control of the character is a little bit more mechanical and finicky.
You could also think of tanks controlling this way, or like a Wall-E type of robot with its little treads.
The treads thing is interesting. That almost makes me think of like the way that the two joysticks would be connected is by levers, because like one of the other episode 1 racer things, if you will, that I think is really cool is putting out fires, right? What is the mechanic? I'm trying to think about what the mechanic is where you're putting out fires. Is it just occasionally your engine catches on fire, or is there like overheating or something?
I think there is an overheating mechanic. And of course, Sebulba, as he's known to do, will throw a wrench or two into your engine.
Poodoo, absolute poodoo. I think like doing a robot or doing it would be cool to have like a mech control that way, and almost a mech warrior or an armored core type of series where you have this mech, it's controlling, you're with the two joysticks, you're moving a little bit away from that. I don't remember the name of that game that is like an entire cockpit of knobs and buttons. Do you know which one I'm talking about?
Yeah, it would have been Mech Assault, Mech Warrior. They all kind of sound the same.
Yeah,
to me.
yeah. This one's like, I forget. It's like Steel Battalion. I think it's Steel Battalion. To be able to take that into account, and then you can have the overheating mechanic. And of course, like, what if you bring this into a Star Fox and you go between mech combat and then like, a Transformers game. God, I'm all over the place, but I'm thinking about all the things that this maps to. And what if we did a Transformer game where you had the sort of on the ground tank controls that were the two joysticks, a la Episode 1 Racer, but then you could transform and then in midair become a robot or become a flying machine that had the speed and velocity of the Episode 1 Racer stuff. And the thing that would be weapons overheating now becomes your engines, and like all the energy is diverted. It could become kind of cool.
Oh, that'd be interesting if you have to dispel the heat by way of like the offensive lasers.
Yeah.
And vice versa.
If you set it in an environment where destroying things is potentially disincentivized in some way, then you get to sort of the situation where dispelling you can't just like shoot off lasers any old time you want. Instead, you're kind of having to really, really be careful with what you do with that extra energy.
I was also thinking Star Wars Episode 1 Racer really depended upon the analog input. You would get the analog input of the levers on the arcade machine, or you could play with two N64 controllers. It was one of those kind of like GoldenEye, where they had an alternate control method where you can hold one controller in each hand and then use each of the thumbsticks in one of your either of your thumbs to control both of the engines, which is always interesting. I'm thinking now on modern controllers, there are technically 4 analog inputs with the both thumbsticks, and then both of the triggers as well are analog. So potentially we can control up to 4 different things with this very kind of like touch sensitive. And it could be kind of a balancing act in a way. You could be guiding, maybe you're on maybe it's like a dog racing or something where you have like different creatures kind of leashed to pull your sled, and you have to individually, with each of the analog inputs, guide them through little mazes, keep them from hitting things.
I think the one thing that I love about the Forza games, both Motorsport and Horizon to a certain degree, is, when you're playing at a higher level, and this is not to say I'm a super pro player here, but when you start to play at a higher level, you realize that not having your foot to the floor on your pedal is preferred over to just like letting it rip across everything except for other than like straightaways. That's usually pretty safe. So what if whatever you're controlling, let's say there's still overheating, you're using the joysticks to turn like that, but then your throttle, your speed is, you want to keep it within a certain zone to maximize both your engine efficiency and your heat usage, right? And so you're encouraged to keep your hands maybe on both triggers, right? And let's not worry about braking for a second. Maybe there's just like take your fingers off both triggers and that'll like drastically slow you down. But you want to keep your triggers almost like 3/4 pulled to really be at the top end of the efficiency spectrum, as opposed to just, so often, basic racing games just treat those things as buttons. Of course, we wouldn't be able to do it on the Switch, right? No analog triggers.
So what could we use to disincentivize people from keeping the pedal to the metal? I know that overheating mechanics are used a lot, but what else could we do that's not overheating?
I wonder if we have certain like obstacles that if you take them at certain speeds, they do like damage to your engine and for the like remainder of the race. So like you can take certain things at, at a slightly slower speed, you're just kind of scraping up against them, or you're able to go around them. Of course, pod racers have that very interesting, like just weird electrical bolt connection in between the two engines. Maybe there's something to having physical obstacles on there. I guess this is going back to being a racing game. What else could there be if it's not racing?
I wanted to kind of circle back to that idea of having to kind of dispel extra heat energy or kinetic energy from, grinding on the ground or whatever it is. That would seem to make me want to put my pedal to the metal more to kind of pull in more of that heat energy or whatever.
I wonder if you have like blasters or something, if you have your right trigger and left trigger mapped to two different elements, like hot and cold, like fire and ice, and depending on the situation or what sort of weapon or damage you want to do, you actually want to have kind of a combination of both elements, and depending on the mix of the elements, you get different effects. So maybe if you have a pure 50-50 on both of them, if you do 100% on both, it stalls out your machine or engine, like it temporarily disables you after some period of time. This, you actually go maybe 3/4 and 1/4, and you get more of like a ice bolt that you're able to fire, and then the other way you get the flame thrower instead of just like fire that comes out of you. And then you can kind of do like element mixing with the triggers, almost analog element mixing.
Or you could gain heat while you turn right and then lose heat when you turn left, and you kind of have to balance based on what you need at the time.
Oh, and, yeah, so you're constantly like feeding the engine like one thing or the other.
Making little circles and stuff instead of, making a 3/4 turn instead of just turning left. Anyways, well, we're out of time there. Let's go ahead and wrap that up and give it a name. I think if this is a tank combat game, we can call it Treadful.
I was going to call it something like knobs and buttons, or buttons and levers. Treadful is cool, though. That sounds more hip than any of my weird stuff.
It reminds me of, I was at a Wendy's and they were advertising the Strawful waffle, which had strawberries on it, but they spelled it STRAWFUL. So it wasn't a pun on waffle. It was a pun off of awful, which is like, why would you want that? I mean, truth in advertising, sure, but like, why would you want to evoke how bad your food actually is when you want us to order it?
I almost was thinking kick it a little bit into the Titanfall space and maybe do Treadfall or something. Yeah, I like it. Strawful, waffle, awful, Treadful is dreadful, right?
Yeah. Right, let's move on to one of your pitches.
Oh, man. So this is not necessarily, my pitch this week is not to be read into too heavily, but I've been playing Gears Tactics. I decided that maybe I like these tactics games. I think we've maybe talked about a pitch like this before, but I started imagining in my head a tactics game, an XCOM or Gears Tactics or Mario Rabbids style game where you are actually having a fight in your relationship with someone. So you almost do like a dating simulator, relationship simulator that is a tactics game. And so you take literally different positions in your arguments and your conversations, and you try to come to maybe an agreement or a consensus, or rectify these arguments through tactical movements and using your turns and action points wisely. So that's the pitch.
All right, I'm going to start the clock.
I have to lead off by asking, did you pitch specifically something exactly like this before?
Hey, even if I did, it doesn't matter now.
It's in.
Let's give it a go. I'm curious, whenever I come up with these game ideas, I tend to more of a visual kind of imagination type of person, like envision what a moment of gameplay would look and feel like. Like, what do you see in your head when you picture this game? What do you see happening?
So I started looking at, I found this article on the internet of 11 common arguments that every relationship has, and how to avoid them. And so they goes through like money matters and intimacy and spending time apart or lack of communication. So I was thinking, wouldn't it be cool to have these play areas or these maps that essentially are physical representations of things like money being a problem. And so now you have a mission where you have to somehow be collecting money as it's like draining away from you, and you're just trying to keep up and at the same time keep your partner by your side or stay with them. And, you kind of have it more as like an abstract exploration of a distance. Like sometimes, an argument is literally just two people being very far apart on a thing, and a stance, a belief maybe, and trying to find ways to come together. And other times, like really big relationship arguments can sometimes be a litany of things from past events. You can imagine like a map that is a representation of that time on the beach and that time at my mother's house, and like all of that sort of stuff to, create that almost like you're playing, you're moving around in a tactic sort of way through your own memories.
I like this kind of visual representation of love is a battlefield in a way, if you will.
You took my name pitch. Dang
not a bad title. Yeah, to have the different kind of quadrants of the battlefield represent different kind of emotions or kind of points of kind of vulnerability. And then you can kind of command armies of perhaps like different argumentative tactics.
Right. Yeah, maybe they're your own emotions. You do like Inside. What's the Pixar movie? Is it Inside?
Well, Inside Out. Yeah.
Inside Out. You do a little Inside Out representation of your own emotions, and you're really figuring out what they need to accomplish in those spaces or what points they need to be at. I think like there's something to this that almost feels like it could feel like a Catherine game, where in the same way that his dreams are representing different things, anxieties, that sort of stuff, and it becomes this puzzle game. I think you could have like the kaiju partner, husband, wife, whoever, who's like lording over the battlefield, and maybe they're having an argument, and this is all like how you're thinking through the difficulty in your own head and working through it.
I would like if there's a risk of losing your cool if certain quadrants of the battlefield don't lead to, there could be multiple types of victories, kind of like in Civilization. There could be like the logical victory where like you legitimately convince the other person that you're right, or at least get them to recognize that they're wrong enough to just kind of like shut up and hang their head and walk away.
Yeah.
There could be like the compromise victory. There could be kind of a psychological victory where, if a certain quadrant is attacked, then all of a sudden, like your troops become more unpredictable. They might stop obeying you because you're going into a little bit of a emotional frenzy at the time.
Yeah, and it could be based on the argument you're having. Maybe there's like a in between each round, there's actual dialogue, right? And you're choosing your way through some dialogue choices, and that affects the flow of where these enemies or something are going to spawn inside of your battlefield. And as I think like we've maybe had arguments with friends, family, whoever, a partner before, where you realize some percentage of the way through the argument that whatever you thought the victory was going to be has really fallen to pieces.
Yeah.
So you have like literal sections of the battlefield collapse, almost Indiana Jones style, where tiles are falling away, and there's not going to be a logic victory to this. Now you're going to have to find like emotional stability or like emotional resonance sort of victory. I think the biggest thing is it would be really nice to figure out. I think even Mario almost had to make this concession, a way to do this tactics game without it necessarily feeling like guns on a battlefield with shooting. And like what kind of alt weaponry.
I mean, a lot of these tactics games, from Tactics Ogre to Final Fantasy, tend to be in a medieval setting, so you can easily sub in swords and stuff like that.
I wonder, what is this? This is going to sound like somebody make a t-shirt of this. What is the sword of the heart? Yeah, I wonder if it's just like little, in Gears tactics, they have like commands like intimidate and hunker down and that sort of stuff. And you can imagine becoming entrenched in your own argument in maybe an important way, or maybe in an unhealthy way eventually. It's not good to stay too entrenched for too long with a character.
Yeah, there could be a certain, almost like a Fortnite style, or I should say PUBG style, border kind of closing in. Maybe there is kind of a central point to the argument, and the border is always closing in on that central point, kind of turn after turn. But there could be an easier victory for you to get that's not in that exact portion of the map. And so you have to kind of like take your chances with fighting in a corner of the battlefield that might be closed off pretty soon, and then that could just be effort wasted. But if you can get in there and really do your damage quickly, then you could end up winning pretty effectively.
Yeah, imagine like you are if you do in between rounds, the conversation that's had, or like what's available to you, is kind of where your emotions have been positioned within the spaces of the play field. And once you also kind of narrow in and make those choices, maybe it determines where the circle is going to be next. So you find yourself, if you don't make really good choices, like good argument choices, maybe you teach people like conflict resolution as a background thing in this, you can actually like affect where the circle is going to close in, and find that you have, like PUBG and Fortnite, Warzone, all these battle royales, you have certain emotions that find themselves outside of the circle. And if they don't get back in the circle very quickly, that you're going to lose those potentially for, the next argument or the one after that. You like burn an argument point of view bridge, or an emotional bridge of sorts.
So I'm just trying to think about player motivations as well. I tend to think that any argument that does become like bitter and personal and stuff, like, is a losing argument, no matter who ends up walking away the victor, so to speak.
Yeah.
Like it's not bad for a relationship to occasionally get in fights. Like, I think it's good to butt heads every once in a while, but
in certain ways, it's disagreement is the only way you can actually come together on certain things. Right. So like, oh, I didn't even know there was friction here until now.
But like, we are kind of encouraging all these situations where you would be trying to find, emotional vulnerabilities and take cheap shots and stuff to try to get your armies ahead. Like, how do we spin this so that like compromise is perhaps a more difficult short-term solution, but a better long-term one?
Yeah, it's a good question. I wonder if like, depending on like finding compromise means, like some of these tactics games, meeting all your bonus objectives. If you meet your bonus objectives, you get some sort of compromise score, and that actually bakes into sort of long-term emotional leveling up. So you're actually like understanding your own emotions a little bit better. Therefore, they get new abilities on their skill tree or something. But it's kind of funny to think about, but also at the same time, I think it's an interesting space. I mean, alternatively, and I hate to throw a wrench so deep into the time on this, but this is a potential very interesting take on a Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney spinoff.
That's true. Well, maybe we can return to explore some more Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney stuff in the future. We've got to close this one down. Let's come up with a name.
Well, I think you said it best. I was going to say it. Love is a Battlefield was the pitch for the name.
I think it's something that we both liked there. Easy enough. Let's move over to the community. This pitch comes from Ashton Hermann, who says, my idea this time isn't so much a fully formed game yet, but a system that I think would be great as a part of an open world RPG. For a long while, I've wondered what somebody could do to make an in-game economy more fun. The Elder Scrolls games have traditionally had skills you could use to barter better or sell more items to vendors. You can even get perks in Skyrim and Oblivion that increase the amount of gold that merchants will have at their disposal to buy items from you. But those systems are rarely ever fun. Money really doesn't ever have that kind of value in game as it does in real life, especially because the best gear in those kinds of games tend to be either found or crafted. So what can we do to make RPG economics fun? Some thoughts I have is that maybe the player needs more economic pressure, or maybe money and experience points could be directly tied to one another. Right, let's go ahead and start the clock. One thing I want to bring up is a somewhat recent game from the last couple of years anyways, is Moonlighter, which is an action RPG, kind of Zelda-like, where you go dungeon diving and then all the creatures that you slay and the treasure chests that you open drop loot, which you, in your day job as a shop clerk, end up selling in your family shop. And you can set the prices on everything kind of blindly, which is kind of cool. You know, you know yourself how much trouble you went through to acquire that piece of loot. And you think, I don't know what anything is worth. I'm not a member of this world, you know? It's my first time here. How much are people willing to pay for an old rustic book?
Right.
And so you put it up for, I don't know, 100 gold. Who knows?
And then someone comes in, they're like, this is incredible, you idiot.
Yeah. Yeah, you see the little dollar signs in their eyes. They pick it up immediately with a big grin on their face, take it to the counter, and you just feel like the biggest sucker. And it's like, well, okay, now I've learned. Like, that's interesting. I feel like there's games that have explored interesting economic systems for selling. I don't know if I've seen similar things for buying, though.
I wonder if, you know, we've seen in the Soulsborne-esque series the idea of experience is your currency, right? But one of the things that a mechanic that you could kind of layer into that is potentially that experience is also your income, right? So just as in real life, as you move up in your career, as you gain more experience, you're better paid for things.
And not always, but
well,
you know, preferably.
Right. That's true. That's true. So
in a perfect world.
In a perfect world, right? Thank you for that. Thank you for that. So maybe there's something we can play with where your income, either how much money you make from quests or even just how much things cost to you and stuff, actually you get more and more incentives for hoarding experience and not spending it on things. And it's only with like certain amounts of experience can you barter, can you craft a certain thing. But if you spend it all back on like fighting skills or whatever, you're just a big dumb fighting idiot and you don't know how to make the better armor because you have no experience anymore at it.
One thing that I've been really kind of wanting from open world games, especially for a long time now, is an idea of kind of object permanence in a way and of a limited supply in the world overall. One of the things that really excited me about Red Dead Redemption 2 when I started playing that was I would walk into a shop and I would basically see everything that they were selling on the shelves. And that was really cool. You know, I could distract a shopkeeper and steal it and actually feel like I was stealing from the shop, not just like taking an item that was kind of decoratively on a shelf to simulate the idea of being in a shop. I was taking a part of their actual limited supply. But then, I come back a day later and all the shelves are full again. The shopkeeper is still as chipper as ever, and it doesn't seem to have noticed the several $1,000s of ammunition missing from the shelves. It's
best supply chain ever.
Yeah, it just, especially for an Old West game where everything else was depicted so realistically, it was hard to, it was disappointing that sense of realism didn't carry over in that regard. And so maybe I feel like in a lot of open world games, the Skyrims and Oblivions of the world, it is kind of prevented because they don't want to like close people off in late game from kind of respecializing in areas they may have neglected before or using things they might have destroyed before. You don't want to trap somebody in the late game with literally no more ammo in the world. There's problems around farming as well. If somebody can enter a random dungeon and keep collecting gold, then you have to have something to keep selling them. Otherwise, like what's the point?
Well, I think to your point there, in the same way that it took a really special game and a special series like the, Dark Souls series to almost be a rebuke of, you know what? No, hard can be fun. It might not be fun for everyone, but it can be fun for a type of gamer. Even in like Diablo and World of Warcraft, like every RPG these days also wants to let you respec and just reset all your skills, and you still get all your skill points and just pick new skills and you're fine. Like you just experiment, and it's really more of a sandbox to play in than it is a locked in like choices that you made over a period of time. So maybe the limiting factor here, right, the economy of it, as Ashton was talking about, making it fun for me is making it special in some way, like making the choice to actually buy something feel like character progression. And I think that's maybe the thing you need to do there is take away the thing that is just now so endemic to RPGs, which is everything you buy in an RPG is junk. Because in 2 levels, there's going to be another thing, right? You're going to be level 22, and if you don't have a level 22 sword, even if your level 12 sword was the best sword you ever had, it was only good for 5 levels, and then you're done with it. So maybe in this world, the things you buy are forever useful to you in the same way that, an axe would really last somebody years, their whole life, potentially.
And I think RPGs have played around with this before. You'll get special kind of named weapons, and this is the axe of Gromathir, and you can read a little bit of history about that specific weapon, but they all tend to be like legendary weapons and stuff like that. Like I'd love for every item in the game, other than maybe like potions and stuff like that, to have that level of history behind them where, if you buy a blacksmith's hammer just so that you can do some blacksmithing, like there is a story behind it. That was this dude's hammer that he used for, maybe it was a family heirloom from his father or whatever. It's just to give everything that sense of weight and importance as well.
Yeah, even if you were able to just like sort of generate that stuff, it would be great and obviously more special in many ways if it was authored. But when somebody, it's like every soldier in a game, I think Assassin's Creed, it's funny that I'm playing through it right now because it's the literal epitome of this, of like everybody's wearing the same pair of leather boots, like they're just all over the place. And like if you pick those up and those are Aether's leather boots, and they're 6 years old and they've got a funny smell to them, but there's something special stats wise about them that is relatively unique. What if every time a game did a random roll on something, that specific set of combinations is now baked in the system? Like it is that item that has that specific roll of stuff. That would really kind of create a space of like, no more god rolls. Like everybody's just like, oh, I'm just going to keep farming these leather boots until I get the perfect set of leather boots. But now you're in a space where, no, you have to craft a set of leather boots, and if the roll is really good, those are your special boots, man. And you got a story, and maybe you can name them and they're yours, and it would be really cool if this was shared world too, because then you could show off H's leather boots and know that nobody else is going to have that exact combo of stuff.
You kind of get this No Man's Sky feel from it as well.
Right. Once you've discovered it, it's baked into the servers.
I would like if NPCs would comment on things where, you can talk to somebody and be like, oh, hey, those are my brother's Jordans that you're wearing right now. I recognize them.
Yeah. Or like, maybe it's funny. It's never been like in the fiction that somebody knows about stats. Mm-hmm. And for someone to be like, oh, there's quite a bit of bonus health on those braces you're wearing. That could be really fun. And you're like, yeah, there is a lot of health on these. Thank you. I'm a tank, man.
All right, let's close it down and give it a name.
Oh, what would we call something that is like, it should sound like an RPG still. How about Infinite Finite? Or Finite
I like
Infinite.
That actually. It reminds me of Infinity Blade, but more recursive. I think that's a good one. Infinite Finite. Let's go out with that. That came from Ashton Hermann, who posted that onto our website at playwrightcast.com/pitch. You can also email us your own video game ideas, playwrightcast@gmail.com, or tweet us at playwrightcast, and we'll read those on an upcoming show.
Special thank you to PROTODOME for the use of our theme song, Hello World, off the album Blue Noise. And when you have time, why don't you go check out the other shows on the Cane and Rinse Network, or if you're already listening to those, head over to the Patreon, kick the network a couple bucks. It helps the literal hundreds, maybe thousands of hours of editing that go into all of these shows throughout the year. It's a really big deal, and it keeps the network going.
So to take us out of the show today, like you established a couple of weeks ago, I have a redacted video game for you.
Oh, the tables have turned. Okay, all right, I think I'm ready.
I do like this. This is a fun little game to, go out on the show on.
I got to tell you, I'm a little bit scared right now, so it's a good feeling.
This one, I don't think it's too difficult, but we'll see. Okay, so as a fearless redacted with attitude, your goal is to rack up the redacted before your shift ends. It's a race against the clock as you pick up redacted and white knuckle it through redacted and redacted to their various redacted. To keep that meter collecting redacted, you've got to take the fastest redacted possible, even if it means bending the redacted laws just a little. So get a grip on the redacted, sharpen your senses, and don't lose your cool.
Oh my God. Okay, so it seems like it's a workplace sort of thing where there's laws that would be in place. What type of, I know that you...
Just to throw a wrench into the mix, these could be like laws of physics and stuff as well. So, don't limit yourself.
Give me the first line of it again.
As a fearless redacted with attitude, your goal is to rack up the redacted before your shift ends.
My goal is to rack up the redacted before your shift ends. Yeah, that's interesting. I can't help but feel like now you've given me a hint with thinking of it. So that almost makes me go...
Or I might have been trying to throw you off the trail.
Right. Well, that would be very mean. That almost puts me in like Aperture Science Laboratories sort of headspace to think of like, robots that are... But in terms of workplace comedies, I don't think it's like Job Simulator, because that doesn't necessarily have a goal. It's more of a place-based. Right. I'm feeling like this could be Overcooked.
It's a race against the clock as you pick up redacted and white knuckle it through redacted and redacted to their various redacted. There's a lot missing from that sentence, and it doesn't read that well, but I like the emotions that come through there.
For sure. White knuckle. All right. I'm going to guess that this is Overcooked.
No, not quite. not entirely on the wrong track, but it's not Overcooked.
Okay. Do I get one more guess, or is that what?
Yeah, keep going. I don't care.
We probably should establish rules around this part of it. Okay. So this is like a specific, I'm picking up redacted and white knuckling it to their redacted. I'm trying to think of a game where I'm like picking things up, rearranging them. This is not one of the Wiggling Joes. I know that. I'm stuck. What is it?
Maybe if I read it in a different voice, it would be useful.
Yes.
Hey, as a fearless redacted with attitude, your goal is to rack up the redacted before your shift ends. Does that help at all?
It helped emotionally, but I don't know if it helped me with my answer. You're doing a character from it?
So to speak.
Or the narrator, perhaps?
The narrator, yeah.
As a fearless redacted. Oh.
It's a race against the clock as you pick up redacted and white knuckle it through redacted.
Oh, man. Oh, what game has a narrator? Can you give me a platform?
Well, let's see. Original platform would be arcade.
Oh. This isn't oh my god, is this what is the bartending game that I'm thinking of? No?
It's a little too old.
That's too old.
I think it's something newer.
As a redacted, pick up redacted and white knuckle it to redacted. God, I'm stuck. No, I need to know. I lost.
You're gonna drive yourself crazy when this comes through.
Oh God. Arcade. That's a massive hint.
It was, it eventually found its way onto the Dreamcast, GameCube, PS2, and Xbox.
Oh, is this Crazy Taxi?
Yeah.
Okay, the Dreamcast thing really unlocked it for me. You're picking up passengers and you're ignoring traffic laws. Is that right?
Yep.
Oh my God! All right, that was a pretty good Crazy Taxi guy.
Oh, that's fun. Well,
context is really important.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us, everyone. We'll catch you again next week.
Bye.